This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under-18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode 492 for October 27th, 2016. Coming up on today's show, sexy metamours. That's coming up on today's show. Hello everyone, I am your host Minx, so happy to be here even if I am flying solo tonight. Got to get more co-hosts in the co-host seat. My weekends have just been booked though, so I end up doing things on weeknights. Anyway, you don't care about that. What you care about is all the awesome content we have coming at you for this week's episode. And I have no news items this week, but some interesting things that came up in my feed in the host chat and announcements section. The first one is related specifically to polyamory, which is that there is a new poly group in Norway. One of the members wrote me and said Poly Norway, has been formally founded as an organization in Norway, accepting new members, existed theoretically since 2011, and aiming to be a strong voice for everyone's right to be in the relationship model of their choice. And they have a Facebook page. So I'm going to provide a link to the Poly Norge Facebook page where you can see a little bit about what their mission is, and you can like them and join them if you are in Norway or near Norway, or you just want to support other awesome poly folks. Next up was something that came across my feed. Actually, no, someone emailed it to me and said this was interesting in dealing with jealousy. But the article is actually entitled 49 Phrases to Calm an Anxious Child. And it's about how when a kid has some type of anxiety, there are these sort of tips and tricks for parents on how to deal with that. Things like, can you draw it? Or pretend we're blowing up a giant balloon. Let's take a deep breath and then blow it up to the count of 5. Or taking a deep breath or going for a walk, something like that. But I thought the list was interesting, but I wanted to hear what you folks thought. So I posted it on the Poly Weekly Facebook page. And people said, yeah, this is really great. Some of the comments were that, hey, this would work for anger management, this would work for jealousy, this would work for your own personal anxiety. There's all kinds of ways you could use these tips. And someone in particular mentioned numbers 20, 32, and 44, which are, respectively, number 20 is, tell me the worst thing that could possibly happen, which is kind of what we recommend with jealousy. The article says, once you've imagined the worst possible outcome of the worry, talk about the likelihood of that worst possible situation happening, and then ask your child, or if it's you, yourself, about the best possible outcome. And then ask about the most likely outcome. The goal of the exercise is to help a child, or yourself, or your partner, think more accurately during the anxious experience. Let's see, what was the next one? I think it was number 32, which is, how can I help? Where you basically ask the child for what they need. And this is something I do all the time. When my partner tells me something, I'm like freaking out because I don't know what the appropriate response is, right? If someone comes and tells me they had a bad day, I know that the appropriate response is, oh, I'm so smart. I'm so sorry, sweetie. That sucks. But sometimes I don't know what the right response is. So in that case, my default is, how can I help? And the last one that was recommended, number 44, was, what do you need from me? But some of these others I really like. If they're creative, if you gave your feeling a color, what would the color be? So you're thinking about like your anger or your anxiety in a different way. That may work for some people, may not work for very many people. It kind of depends. I like that there's like 50 different things you can choose here. And one of the things they recommend as well is to ask if it's okay to hug them. And that made me think of Franklin's response at the jealousy panel that I moderated with him and several others at Atlanta Poly Weekend, I think it was, when we asked how to deal with jealousy. And Franklin said, when a partner comes to me and says that they are feeling jealous, my first thing I say is, do you want to cuddle? Which, when you think about it, is, of course, if somebody's coming to you saying, I'm feeling insecure or I'm feeling bad, of course you should do that. But hey, some people don't like to be touched. Some people aren't ready for touch at that point. So, of course, it's good to ask. I will post a link in the show notes if you didn't happen to see it on Facebook, but let me know if you think it's useful. Our topic this week is what to do when your metamour is sexy. Actually, specifically, it was about how do you ask out a metamour. So our listener wrote in and said, how do you handle situations when you become attracted to a metamour, especially metamours that are more than once removed? Our writer said, look, if you're attracted to your lover's lover, that's pretty easy. We start talking about threesomes, and there's a pretty straightforward path to where things go. But how do you navigate things when you're attracted to maybe your lover's lover's lover? I think this is a trickier situation in heterosexual polycools because of the guy-guy or girl-girl metamour dynamic, writes our listener. I've noticed in my own situations I'm attracted to a surprising number of my same-sex metamours partners. I guess maybe this isn't as surprising as it seems since we're both clearly attracted to the same person. It's also not as bad if you meet the second partner without knowing that they're already attached to your polycule. It seems potentially tricky to decide whether you're attracted to the person themselves or simply because they're in your polycule and are already pre-approved, if you will. It also seems tricky because your same-sex metamour could feel like you keep hitting on all their partners just because it's convenient. Yeah, I think that's possible. That's likely. I've been around poly long enough to realize that probably the first thing you're going to say is communication. And I agree with you. But in this case, it seems easier said than done. Well, okay, I'll just insert here. In every case, communication is easier said than done. Otherwise, everybody would just do it and nobody would write me and we wouldn't have a podcast. Largely because you're just close enough, but just far enough away, the letter continues, from your same-sex metamour. It's one thing to go to a poly mixer or meet some random poly people, find yourself attracted to them and ask them out. But it's quite a different thing, at least in my mind, to express attraction to someone after you've met them at a more intimate polycule dinner. The monogamous equivalent would be hitting on a friend's partner, an act reviled in most monogamous circles. Is this just a personal hang-up that I need to get over? Have you experienced this? If so, how have you handled it? Okay, good question. I do really wish that we had a co-host to weigh in on this because I think we could have quite a variety of different responses to this. So you'll have to write in polyweekly@gmail.com or call in to 802-505-POLY and let me know what you think. So I don't think that I have experienced this. I mean, clearly, Lusty Guy and Elle need to bring home more partners for me. Clearly. This needs to happen because they're not bringing home anything for me. All right, guys, let's get on that. Okay, now part of that's because I'm not particularly interested in same sex. And I probably want a male partner, although there have been rare occasions when I've been attracted to a woman. It's pretty rare, though. But mostly it would be male. And I know that Elle often says that Lusty Guy is all the testosterone that she needs. And Lusty Guy is pretty damn straight, so probably not going to be bringing home any men for me, more's the pity, because I have so much extra time to date. Anyway, long answer to the first part of your question, which was, have you experienced this? So what I'm hearing in your email is that you are feeling self-conscious about that you might be perceived as either predatory or lazy. And I guess those are both kind of negative, right? Now, what I don't hear in your email is any concern about feeling the need to get approval from those interim partners or get approval down the chain of command, which I think is a good thing. You're not really worried that there will be disapproval if you like the partner. You're just worried that it would be that people are going to think that you're lazy, or that maybe you're just pouncing on every cute same-sex person that happens to pop into the polycule. So I guess my advice is going to be fairly short. Yes, you should get over it. When we're looking at dating somebody, we're all worried about something. That's why people are nervous when they date, because we're afraid that we're going to come across as lazy or predatory or socially awkward or geeky or too strong or too bossy or too weak or too wimpy or, any one of a number of things. We're all worried about how we're going to be perceived. And, the trick to that is being comfortable in your own skin, as long as you know that you're not doing it because you're predatory, or that you know that you're not doing it because you're lazy. Then everybody else will be comfortable with it too, eventually. Or maybe you look deep down and you discover you are doing it because you're lazy. You're like, look, it's really hard to go out there and date. I waste a lot of time on OkCupid. Tinder's not my thing. These people are awesome. I am lazy. You know what? Embrace it. I am, I don't often quote Heinlein, but I quote Heinlein in this particular instance, which is when he said, innovation comes about by men, and with him it's always men, looking for easier ways to do things. Lazy men looking for easier ways to do things. And I am all for being lazy. If you can find a shortcut to, your love life or your housework or anything else, for God's sake, share it with me, because I am always looking for more time, and I'm always looking for shortcuts where I can still get the job done to my satisfaction. And if this works for you, fucking go for it. Be lazy. But yes, I would say in general, at some point we do have to stop worrying about what other people will think. But the other trick I have to dealing with worrying about what other people are going to think is that I say it, right? If you're worried about this genuinely and you're approaching a metamour and expressing an interest, basically tell them what you just told me. Just put it out there in the open and say, look, I'm really worried that you or other people in the polycule are going to think I'm predatory or lazy or pouncing on all the cute same-sex kids, but I just happen to like you. I think you're cute. I do like you. So there you go. And usually when you express a worry like that, most likely the reaction is that it's much more exaggerated in your own head than it is in anybody else's. And the response will probably be something fairly positive and reassuring. Unless, there's always a chance that you are a really big asshole. There's always a chance that you are a big predator and that, the person says, ew, get away. I do suspect that's fairly unlikely to happen, though. So that was all on my own. What do you think? Does that help? And our feedback this week is from Harry.
Hi, Minx and Lusty Guy. This is Harry. I just wanted to say thanks for your latest episode about independence. I've been catching up ever since you guys came back from the hiatus and loving all the new shows. I wanted to say that I really think that this concept or idea of the check-in is one that's important, but I discovered recently that sometimes it's important to check out and request some time off and agree on what that looks like, and come back and share what you've learned. And this episode has really reminded me about the importance of that on a day when I was asked to give my partner a couple of days off, and I similarly, but not in the same way, requested that time to reflect on our relationship and just to reconnect with some people that I haven't had a chance to do so with. So that's all for now. Look forward to your next episode, and thanks so much for all the advice and good vibes that you send out every week. Take care.
Hey, Harry, thanks so much for calling in. And I know that this technique does work for a lot of people. Sometimes you need to be outside the relationship, or at least feel outside of the relationship in order to see it clearly. I will say that this technique doesn't tend to work very well for me. If things are so bad that I feel I need to step out of the relationship, well, first of all, I can't just step out of a relationship. If it's been, building, if it's something that's been woven together over years, I can't just step out, right? And then what ends up happening when I'm on my own thinking about the relationship is that I'm not really thinking about the facts of the relationship. What ends up, if the other person isn't, or the other people aren't actually there for me to talk to and run things by, what ends up happening is that whatever my biggest fears are, that's what I think about when I'm thinking about and reviewing the relationship. So I know this technique works for a lot of people, and if it works for you, awesome. The only way I can really get perspective on a relationship is by talking to the actual people in the relationship. The whole time and space thing doesn't really work very well for me.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere.
Our Happy Poly Moment of the Week is from Was, who said, "I just discovered your podcast this year, and I've already learned so much. Thank you for your insight and all of the valuable resources you offer to your listeners. My nesting partner, we'll call him N, and I have been together for a while, but I've only lived together for a couple of months. I was previously solo poly. We've been navigating what it means for us to live together. We went from not communicating very much about metamours to being very open about all of our interactions. It was a little difficult for us at first, but now we're very comfortable with the level of open communication. My other partner, K, flew home today and his flight was delayed, so I was unable to pick him up before work. N offered to pick him up at the airport in my place, even though he doesn't know him very well. When I got off work, I opened Facebook to see that N had posted in a local poly group that we belong to. He was posting his own happy poly win about picking K up and getting to know him better. This made my heart feel very full. I hope our lives are full of more kind actions and happy moments." Well, that is a fantastic happy poly moment. We all want our partners and metamours to be happy together, but it's not something that we can force. And I love that N volunteered for the pickup and took advantage of that opportunity to get to know K a little bit better and maybe deal with any metamour fears that may have been lurking. That is an awesome happy poly moment. Well, that wraps up our little bit short show this week, but that's okay. We got tons of good content coming down the pipe. And I do want to thank everybody who has written in or called in. We're getting more requests to speak at different groups, and I do forward those to lustyguy@polyweekly.com, as he is our booking agent. So if you want us to speak, you can always write into polyweekly@gmail, but do make sure that you copy lustyguy@polyweekly.com, because I'm just going to forward it to him anyway. And if you do have questions, comments, or feedback, polyweekly@gmail.com. Call 802-505-POLY. Find us on Facebook.com/polyweekly or on Twitter @polyweekly or @cunningminx. And do remember that it is not all about the sex.